Joining us now is Israel's Minister for Strategic Affairs, Ron Dermer, and we greatly appreciate your time. I'm just going to jump right into this. Now on the sixth, thank you for joining us. This sixth day of the conflict, for the millions of our viewers who are watching right now, what is your assessment of the effort so far? What has changed and sparked the situation that we see unfolding?
Well, frankly, this so far on day 6, we've exceeded our expectations, both on offense and on defense. Remember, Didi, why we started this in the first place is our goal was to achieve two things. We wanted to remove two existential threats to the survival of the state of Israel. The first one was the nuclear threat, and the second is the ballistic missile threat. Where are we on the nuclear threat? Israel has taken out the main enrichment facility in Natanz, where they spin the fuel that you need for nuclear weapons. We took out centrifuge manufacturing facilities. We took out a conversion facility where you would convert that uranium to the stuff that you need for nuclear weapons. And in the first minutes of this battle, in the wee hours of last Friday, we took out the top scientists in Iran who were working on their Manhattan Project. And this is the project to get Iran an atomic bomb. And Israel is a country where Iran is publicly calling and actively working to destroy the state of Israel. So we're obviously not going to give them the means to achieve that goal. And that's something that Prime Minister Netanyahu has been telling the world for years. In addition to dealing with the nuclear side, we're also dealing with the ballistic missiles. Some of your viewers who are following what is happening in Israel day after day may see that these giant missiles that are around the size of 2 buses filled with explosives, about a ton of explosives, landing in our cities, on civilian neighborhoods. And we want to make sure that a country the size of Israel, which is all the size of New Jersey, is not facing an enemy that has 10,000 or 20,000 of these ballistic missiles, because that too is a threat to the survival of Israel. So what are we doing there? We're going not only after the missiles itself, but the manufacturing sites where they produce these missiles and all the materials, the sites where they gather the materials that go into those missiles. And that not only helps Israel, it also helps defend all of our Arab neighbors who are threatened by Iran and its terrorism and its missiles, and what Iran has been doing for decades with chaos and carnage throughout the Middle East. And ultimately, let's remember one last thing, Didi. Israel for Iran is the little Satan. The great Satan is the United States of America. So in actually going after Iran and degrading those capabilities and dealing with their nuclear materials, dealing with the ballistic missiles, we're not only defending ourselves, we're also helping secure America.
You bring up several points, Ron. First of all, we just had the map in front of us, and it really highlighted the difference in size that we're talking about here between Israel and Iran. You also mentioned existential, and that is so important because we are talking about a battle where the stakes could not be higher on both sides, and that this is an existential battle. We will get to that in just a moment, but I do think it's important just to take a step back. For all of the Americans who are watching this right now, Ron, just speak to us about the profound fear Israelis have been living with before October 7th, after to now. And we also know at this moment, as we are doing this interview, Israeli Americans are being evacuated from the country. So speak to us about the current situation as it relates to the fear that Israelis are experiencing.
Well, remember, Iran is a regime, as I said, that openly calls and actively works to destroy Israel. And they have been calling for our destruction and working towards our destruction for decades. They have a plan for the destruction of Israel. And in fact, what happened on October 7th is that Sinwar, the head of Hamas, that's one of the Iranian proxies, he jumped the gun. They wanted to surround Israel with their terror proxies in a ring of fire and use a combination of ballistic missiles and invasions to destroy Israel, because we're a very small country. You made that point. We are the size of New Jersey. Iran is 80 times the size of Israel, if you see it on that map. Their population is 10 times the size of Israel. So you have an Israeli David that is fighting an Iranian Goliath. Now, David had a slingshot and a few stones. Well, guess what we have? We have one of the best air forces, no offense to the American Air Force, in the world, and some of the best intelligence and precision weapons that actually the United States helps supply us. And we are systematically taking on this threat, not just for us. Of course, we're doing it for us because they're calling and working to destroy us, but also for all of our Arab neighbors who are threatened by Iran, and also for the United States. We are the front line of civilization in a very, very dangerous region. And you don't have to here put American boots on the ground, because you have in Israel an actual partner and ally that is fighting your fight. And that's why our victory, and it will come, we will be victorious. Our victory, Israel's victory, will be an American victory as well.
I'm glad that you brought up the partnership, the decade-long commitment, really, the U.S. has with Israel, the history of cooperation. Walk us through what that means right now. And I'm also curious, I understand that you've been in touch with the administration officials. Any indication of what could come next?
Well, first, let's understand what it means for America, what I just said about us taking on this threat. This regime in Tehran, that I don't think represents the Iranian people who hate that regime, and they're probably very pro-American, maybe the second most pro-American population in the Middle East after Israel. But when this regime came to power, you know what? It may have been before you were born. You know the first thing they did was they took over the American embassy and held Americans hostage for 444 days. And then they decided to have their proxy Hezbollah bomb a Marine barracks in Beirut, and they killed 241 Marines. And then they bombed American embassies in Africa. And one of the worst things they did in terms of the cost of human lives and suffering of American troops is they were behind all of these IEDs in Iraq that killed and wounded so many servicemen. Those men and women who were in Walter Reed with limbs that were taken out, that was backed by the Iranians. So again, when we're fighting this enemy, we are not only fighting our own enemy, we're fighting America's enemy. Now about the partnership. I can tell you that I've been dealing with the U.S.-Israel relationship at the highest levels for about 15 years. 4 as the senior advisor to the Prime Minister, almost 8 as the ambassador of the State of Israel to the United States, and now in my current capacity as a minister in Prime Minister Netanyahu's government. There has never been this tight of a partnership than the one we have today, first and foremost led by President Trump, who has been a tremendous friend of Israel. Right now, America is helping defend Israel. You're doing it with Aegis ships that are actually intercepting some of those rockets that are aimed towards Tel Aviv. You're doing it with THAAD, a THAAD system, which is another missile interceptor system. And you also have American pilots who are in the skies knocking down drones that are being launched at us from Iran. So we are deeply grateful for the president's support. And I can tell you, I'm on the phone every day, multiple times a day, with the senior officials in the administration and Prime Minister Netanyahu. He just spoke to President Trump yesterday. He spoke to him a couple of days before that. I think this partnership is tighter than ever, and it's critical for us. But we also think it's important for America as we take on this fight and as the Israeli David takes on that Iranian Goliath.
Iran rejected surrender today, issuing a warning to the U.S. of irreparable harm. You mentioned the president, who had been vocal about pushing for a deal, at least previously. The Ayatollah has been defiant. Is there a chance for a deal at this point?
Well, listen, everyone would like a deal that dismantles Iran's military nuclear capability. Who wouldn't? Because then we could avoid this conflict. And the president made clear from the beginning, Iran is not going to get a nuclear weapon, and he's not going to leave them with an enrichment capability. Because if they have the enrichment capability, then you have to trust them. And we know how much you can trust Iran. So he's been very clear about his positions. He gave them 60 days, and he said, listen, I want to get a deal. I'm not going to be strung along and let this play out. We worked very closely with the U.S. administration during those negotiations, and ultimately Iran wasn't serious about it doing deal. Will they try now to rush at the last hour as everything is being taken away from them to do a deal? Who knows? But I trust President Trump that he's going to stand firm, and he has clear red lines, and he's going to enforce those red lines. I have no doubt about it.
And you mentioned the aerial fight. The bunker-busting bombs seem to be the wild card here as we look at the U.S. potential involvement. Could that, in your opinion, make the difference?
Well, listen, that's an American decision, Didi, and I think the President of the United States is going to have to make a decision of what he thinks is in American interest, and I think he's holding his cards close to his vest, and he's leaving all options on the table, and that's exactly what an American president should do. I can tell you right now, the United States has been there with us, shoulder to shoulder on defense, and we're deeply appreciative of that. What President Trump will decide to do moving forward, I don't know.
There's been a lot of talk that if the U.S. does intervene, Iran will go after U.S. bases in the region. Does Iran have enough ballistics to go after the U.S. and Israel?
Didi, let me ask you a question. If you were the Iran, would you go after the United States? I think that would threaten the very survival of the regime. So I would not suggest that anyone attack American bases and American soldiers. I think President Trump has a pretty good record on that. If you remember a few years ago, the Iranians killed an American contractor. An American contractor. It wasn't even an American soldier. And you know what President Trump's response was? He took out Qasem Soleimani, which is the master terrorist of Iran. So I think the last thing you want to do is test the resolve of President Trump.
And I would like to look at what is going on in the wider region. Gas prices, as we look here at America, comes to mind. Could a war of this stature have an impact on oil prices and the flow of oil in the Persian Gulf? What could neutralization of Iran mean for the greater region? Of course, we are talking about power dynamics here, but also economic impacts.
Well, let's understand what Iran is. Iran is this octopus that has these terror tentacles throughout the region. They had it before October 7th. They had Assad in Syria. They have effectively controlled Iraq. They had Hezbollah controlling Lebanon, and they have the Houthis in Yemen. So Iran has all of these terror tentacles. Because of what Israel did in the wake of October 7th, we've turned those octopus arms into T-Rex arms right now, and they don't have the proxies. The impact it will have on oil when Iran is defanged is going to be a terrific impact for international markets, because they're the reason why the Middle East, for a lot of people, is a dangerous place to invest. It's all about Iran. Look at all the problems in the Middle East. 95% of them, they have a return address, and it's Iran. And if Iran is defanged, if its proxies are rolled up, if its ballistic missile program is taken out, and its military nuclear capability is dealt with, I think you're going to have a real surge of prosperity in the region, and something else. You're going to have peace. Remember, in the last year of President Trump's first term, I was ambassador in Washington at the time. I worked closely with the Trump team, with Jared Kushner, and of course, the president leading the effort. We were able to do the Abraham Accords. And everybody thought that was impossible. It had been a quarter century since you had the last peace deal between Israel and an Arab neighbor. And in 4 months, we got 4 peace deals with 4 Arab countries. I believe in the wake of this conflict with Iran, we will turn the page on the wars of the Middle East and move towards peace. And I think we can expand it, and it will happen much faster than people think, simply because of the work, frankly, that Israel has done since October 7th at mowing through these Iranian proxies. We have now made the Middle East a much safer place. And after this conflict with Iran is over, it's definitely going to be a safer place. And I hope very much that the people of Iran will get rid of this regime that they hate. I said the people of Iran are a friend of America. They were a friend of Israel before this regime came to power. They hate this regime. They went to the streets in 2009. You remember that? They went to the streets in 2022 when they tried to murder a woman for taking off her head covering. I think the Iranian people are going to be free. I don't know what's going to happen in a week. It's in a month or a year or 3 years or 5 years, but I think it's going to happen, because you cannot oppress people for a half a century and simply think that that's going to last forever. So a lot of people may think this big bad regime in Iran is there forever. Don't bet on it.
A rapidly escalating situation that the world is watching closely. We know how busy you are, so we do appreciate you taking some of your time to speak with us. Israel's Minister for Strategic Affairs, Ron Dermer, thank you for joining us tonight on the National News Desk.
Thank you.